Hello everyone out there. This is Tyson Fuel Systems Research and Development. Just wanted to show a quick tip video for you guys on some tricks for tiling. First trick is you can get a large red solo bowl to use to draw your lines on your tile on your backer board for the toilet flange. And an easy way to measure so that everything is centered correctly is to measure from wherever your edge is. For mine, for instance, was the shower. So you measure, like for me, I measured from the edge of the shower onto the edge of the wax ring right here, and then measure from the edge of the shower over to the other end of, the wax ring, the toilet flange right here. And then you take your measurements from wherever your other side is that you're going to be measuring from. Take the measurement from, for instance, this wall to the edge of the flange right here, and then the wall to the edge of the flange right here. Once you've got all your measurements, what you'll do is mark 2 lines. So you measure from your backer board. It's best if you go out a little bit further, especially if you haven't pre-marked anything yet. If you measure from a little bit further over, for instance, right over here on the edge where you can see my shadow pointing to, and then put your mark from where that measurement is on this side of the flange. You do that twice, and then you'll put your straight edge there and then draw a line across to mark it, and do that on all other sides as well. And it ends up looking like this. Like you see here, you can see the 4 lines going across that I've drawn. Once you've got your square there for where your intersecting points are, that is the perimeter of where your flange is. Once you've got that, then you can get this large red solo bowl. It fits perfectly for the flange right here. It's just a little bit bigger, which gives you a tad bit of wiggle room when you go to lay your backer board and your tile down, which is what you will need, because oftentimes it doesn't ever sit in like 100% perfectly, especially if you got walls that are not square. When you measure, you should measure to compensate for it not being square, but it's always best to have just a teeny bit of wiggle room when you have circle cutouts. So once you got the square, lay your bowl down in the middle of that square, center it, line the edge of the bowl up with the lines that you've drawn so that it's centered in that square, and then hold it down and draw your circle around it. Okay, after you've drawn your circle, you can get a utility knife and score the circle that you've drawn, the lines. Score it really, really well with a utility knife. Go over it a few times so that you have a nice deep score line for where your cutout's going to be. And then after you've scored your line around the circle, what you'll do is you'll basically make a pie cutout. I would do 8 lines going through it from the outside edge to the outside edge straight across, and do it in a pie formation so that you have 8 pies, basically 8 pieces of the pie. And then what you'll do after you've done that is knock a hole out with the hammer, and if you have like a little handheld saw or an electric one to cut your lines on the backer board so that they're all the way through, it works easiest that way. So you'll cut the lines that go through the center and then end them at the outside perimeter of the circle all the way around, and then you can just knock them off with a hammer and you'll get nice clean cuts. And then when you go to do it on your tile, take your measurements the same way. Draw the square basically on your tile, put your bowl on, trace the circle on when it's centered in that square, and then pretty much just do the same thing. You can get a grinder, a wet, dry blade for a grinder. That works pretty well for these toilet flanges, to make the cutouts on them. And you'll just get your grinding wheel and then cut through the center, and then bring it from the center and drag it out to the edge of where your circle's at. And do that all the way around. I would do that at least 16 times, 16 lines, And then if you can get a wet dry cutoff wheel for a Dremel tool, those work pretty well to do a score line on your tile around the where your circle is drawn, because tile can be a pain to cut, especially if it's porcelain. You have to use a diamond blade or a metal blade that's got the diamond particles embedded into it. Otherwise, you're not going to penetrate porcelain for nothing. Another quick tip is when you are putting your backer board down, use, I think it's called backer-on screws, not the rock-on. The backer-on screws, to show you the difference between them, these right here are the rock-on for like Wonderboard, and they've got the Phillips heads on them. If I can get in focus here, as you can see, well, they do not sit down very well on the board when you go to screw them in, which sucks. So do not use the rock-on screws. Use the backer-on screws. Backer-on screws are for Hardy backer. Rock-on were designed for the like Wonderboard. So the difference is when you use a Phillips head, it sucks to put things in, and you can easily strip out the heads, and so you can't sink them down all the way. But the backer-on screws, they come with the square heads, not the Phillips, so you can get a whole lot better grip on the head as you're screwing it in, so you can screw them in nice and snug. So there's a couple of tips for doing tile. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to ask and post your comments. This is Tyson with Fuel Systems Research and Development. Take care.